Hello, welcome back to another video. It's Matthew from Matthew's Tech Hub here. And in today's video, guys, we're going to be covering on how to install and configure a BeamMP server along with the Cobalt Essentials plugin as well. Now, I have seen the guys from Cobalt who created the plugin for BeamMP create a bit of a video on that, but there's a few things which I sort of think that they didn't really cover, and there's also a few things which they have covered which I don't really think is necessary. So I thought I would create my own version on how to configure it. I have a few Beam servers myself which I run, and I just thought, you know what, I need to make a video. I'll show people how to do it, and yeah, hopefully you guys can get some good servers running and have no issues from it. So let's run into it. So first of all, guys, there'll be two links to start off with in the description. The first one will be for the BeamMP server. Now, you will need to go into the description and download the BeamMP server from the official BeamMP website. And then the second one, you'll need to also go to the Cobalt Essentials page. It's like a forum on the BeamMP forums, and then there'll be a GitHub link on there which you'll need to click on and then download the zip file from there as well. Now, after you've downloaded those, come back to this video and we'll start. So basically, we now have two zip files. So we have the Cobalt and the BeamMP. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a normal file or a normal folder called BeamMP, or whatever you guys want to call it. It's up to you. It's just simply just for the name of the server, so you know what it is. Now, if we go into the file which we downloaded from the BeamMP website, straight away, what we want to do here is you'll have four files here. So you have Linux, Windows, License, and README. Now, because obviously we're on a Windows machine, we're going to click on Windows, and then we're going to have an exe file in here. So you're going to want to drag this out of the zip file and put it into your BeamMP server folder. Now, before we can actually install Cobalt Essentials, we do need to run the server at least once. So you're going to go into your Beam folder, and then we're going to double click on the BeamMP server. Now, if you do get this error here, this is just simply Windows thinking, oh, hey, this file doesn't look very legit, or it hasn't been signed by a proper developer. Do you want to run it? Don't worry, it's all safe, guys. Again, your antivirus may also kick up some errors about that, but depending on your antivirus, you may need to just allow this through your antivirus as well. So to get past this, just click More Info, and then Run anyway. Now, as you can see, it's going to come up with a few errors because it's the first time running it. So the first one is saying that there's no auth key specified, but again, we'll come back to that in a few moments as well. So let's just simply close out of this here. And we now have all our files generated for hosting a decent BeamMP server. So what we're going to do now is we are going to go back to the Cobalt Essentials plugin. And in here, when you open it up, you have the Cobalt Essentials-master. Now, if we go into Resources in the BeamMP server, and then go into Server, you want to now drag this folder into here. So if we just drag that across to here, and there you go, that's all installed. So easy as that. So what we're also going to do, we are going to quickly just run the server once more again. As you can see, it's now generated all the files for Cobalt, and you can also tell if it's running because you'll get the error about the auth key still, and then you will then see all the files for Cobalt Essentials below come up down here. But don't worry about this, we'll come back to this in a moment, but we'll just close this again for now. So let's start off by configuring the BeamMP server first. So we need to go into the serverconfig.toml. Now, one piece of software which I'm also going to put a link down to you guys is there's something called Notepad++. Now, you guys may also be aware of this, but it's a fantastic piece of software, especially if you're editing documents like text files like this, or any sort of configuration files. Even if you guys maybe host, I don't know, Minecraft servers or some other games, it's a very, very good piece of software. It's free, but I'll also put a link to download that in the description below, which I highly recommend if you're going to be configuring files like this. So we're going to open this up now with Notepad++. So as you can see, we've now got some information and some configuration stuff here to do. It's very straightforward, but we just need to run through a few things, and I'll explain in terms of what it does. So if we're starting off with the general section, you have the name. So this is going to be the name of your Beam server. So it's up to you what you want to call this. I'm going to call mine, just for today's video, Cobalt server. Now you can also put colors in the name as well by using the little, I don't know what it's called, it's like a little up arrow. It's normally on the number 6 key on your keyboard. For example, like this, and then if I do 6 or 5, again, I'll put the colors in the description below in terms of what I found from the forums. I use it on my server because I host a Nürburgring map server, but for today's tutorial, we're just going to leave it completely standard as Cobalt server. Now, the port, this is the port that is going to run. Now, by default, BeamMP does run on 30814. So if you are hosting a server for your friends or for just for yourself or for whatever sort of reason, you will need to make sure that you do open up this port on your firewall as well as your network, or for example like your home router as well. If you are going to be using this on a public server host, for example, I host a server from ovh.com, which is very good. I simply just rent a Windows server. All I had to do was just enable this on Windows Firewall, and then straight away it works. So just make sure you do port forward that port. Now, if for some reason you have something else on your network running on this port, not a problem. You can simply just change the port. You can change whatever you want, 30815, 30816, whatever you want to do. But again, for today's tutorial, as I said, I'm going to keep everything as stock as I can, and I'm going to leave it as 30814. Now the next part is the auth key. Now this requires you to have a Discord account. You do need to have a Discord account to get the authentication key for your server. So simply all you need to do is go on this link up the top, just up here, and you'll need to sign into your Discord account, and then straight away you'll be able to go and click into keys, and then you can then click on create a new key, which will then require you to put your server name and then I think it's just server name, and then it will ask you for a few other details. But once you filled those in, it will then give you an auth key. Now I'm not going to, for this video, I'm not going to show you guys the auth key that I put in, because that auth key is specific to you. So don't share this auth key with anyone else, otherwise someone else could use your key to host a server or for any other reason. But I will come back to that in a moment. So I'm going to fill this key. I'm going to pause the video in a moment, and then I will fill that in after I've run through all the rest of it. Now log chat, that's basically if you want the server, as it says, to log the chat. It's up to you. I'm going to turn this off because you don't really need to log the chat. There's no need. If it will log obviously any errors, but you just don't. There's no point seeing the chat unless you specifically want to keep a history of what people have been saying on your server. Debug, that's if you want to enable debugging, but again, not bothered about that. I'm just going to leave that false. Private, this basically is if you want your server to be completely sort of off the server list on BeamMP, or if you want it to be shown publicly. Now, I would, if I'm hosting a server publicly, I would usually keep that as false, but just for today's video, I'm going to leave it as true, because I don't want this server to be online to the rest of the world, for everyone to just join. So if it is private, that does mean that you will need to give someone your IP address along with the port if you have changed it from 30814 to be able to join your server as well. Now the next part is max cars. So this is the max amount of cars that players can spawn. You do need to change this for the Cobalt plugin, so I'm going to recommend changing this maybe to sort of 5 or 6, but I'm just going to leave it to 5 now, because you do need to raise the limit just because with Cobalt Essentials you can actually restrict what cars and etc. and items players can spawn. For example, on my Nürburgring server I have it so people can't use, for example, like the brick wall and just stupid items. They can only spawn cars that I've given them access to, but again, we'll run through all those in a few moments. Max players, how many players you want on your server? It's fairly straight obvious. I'm going to leave that as 8, but again, you can change that to whatever you want. Now, because BeamMP is a mod, it doesn't work very well with a lot of players. I'm going to maybe suggest that you don't have any more than maybe 15, 20 at a push. 20 is the absolute limit I would have on a server. But if you do have a few players, it just depends, because if you have players with low spec machines, they are going to get a lot of frame rate lag, so you don't really want that to happen. The map, again, so if you do have a custom map, again, I'll create another video on how to do this. You can actually add different maps, so if you download a custom map from the community, you can change this, but again, I'll put a link to the codes in terms of what map you want to run. So for now, we'll just leave it as stock, so it'll be grid map, but I'll put a link in the description below if you do want to change the map to another map for BeamMP, either a custom or a standard map. you do need to change this one to a specific one. Now, description, this is the description of the server, so again, we'll leave it completely stock, but usually people put like their Discord or just a bit of information about what the server is and what the reason is for it, basically. Resource folder, we'll leave that as well, don't need to worry about that. And there's a few other options as well down here. So if you want to, for example, if you want to send errors, again, we want to see the errors, send error messages, etc. You know, and then you can also disable server updates as well. But I'm going to leave that completely turned on because who wouldn't want updates from BeamMP, right? And again, this is all different stuff. So if you want to configure the IP, so if you're running this on a shared virtual machine, or if you want to change the host IP that this server runs on, you can do all this. There's a lot of configuration you can do, and you can also enable SSL as well. But you will, I believe, you do need an SSL certificate. But there's just no need for it. I'm not bothered. It's just this is all just a standard server for today's tutorial. So I'm going to pause the video here now, guys. I'm going to quickly put my auth key in, and then we'll now run to the step on how to configure Cobalt Essentials. Okay, so my auth key is now being filled in. So what we're now going to do is we're going to look at the Cobalt Essentials part of this plugin. So if we go back into our BeamMP server here, and then we want to go into the resources, and then back into the server. Sorry, excuse me there. And then what you want to do is you then want to click on the Cobalt DB. Now we'll come through all the rest of the files in a moment, but we're just going to worry about this Cobalt DB, which means Cobalt database. Now in here straight away you have 6 files in here. Now we're going to start off to get going with the config.json file. So this is going to be the main file in terms of the configuration for Cobalt Essentials. Now, there's a few options in here. For example, if you want to enable the whitelist. So if you want to enable whitelist, you can turn that on, which allows players to not be able to join your server unless they are specifically on the specified whitelist. Archon keep tick alive. This basically just tells you if you are going to be using Archon, which again is a remote connection sort of software which you can get, something called IceCon, which they recommended to use on the Cobalt video. Again, I don't really see the need of it because you can access the actual console for the server anyway, so I don't see the point in using IceCon. There's just no need, so I'm not going to cover that in today's video. Console prefix, this is for the so any meshes that come through from Cobalt Essentials. I'm going to have it so it says CE at the start, so I know it is Cobalt Essentials. The Archon port, we're not going to worry about this because we've just got no need for it. Now you can also change this down here. So this is if you want to have colors in. So for example, I like to see the colors in the console because it shows you which part of if you need to look at the logs of the server, you can basically tell which part is Cobalt Essentials and then which part isn't. So it's nice to keep the colors on, but again, if that colors are causing you guys an issue, feel free to just turn it off and just change that to false. Max amount of players, we're going to leave it as 20. So this basically allows people to join the server up to 20 people. And then if so, I've obviously got the limit set to 8. So if any more join after 8, that means they will be able to join, but they will only be able to spectate. They will not be able to spawn any vehicles. There's also a few other commands down here. For example, the Cobalt database port. You can change that if you are currently using the port 10814, but there's just no need. Enable debug, and there's also a command prefix down here as well. Again, I'm just going to leave all that completely stock. So next we're going to go into the permissions. So the permissions here, this is basically sort of if you want to create sort of different groups. Now I'm not going to cover this, we're going to keep it completely stock. There's no sort of need. Now, for example, we have a group 1 which is permission level 1, group 3 permission level 2, group 10. So obviously if you are just a normal player when you join the server, you'll obviously start off with group level 1. If you are an administrator or an owner of the server, obviously you have number 10. Maybe if you have some staff members as well that are on the server, they would obviously probably maybe level 5 or whatever. So you can create different levels, different tiers of groups, and they have access to different things, but it depends on what obviously server you're creating. If you're just going to create a server just to restrict certain spawnage of vehicles and you want players just to join and use the vehicles, like for example cars only but no brick walls or sledgehammers or whatever, then obviously you can configure all this through here as well. So send message, this is if it sends a message in the chat about when you update the permission. Again, no need for it, and you've also got the spawn vehicles. So this basically tells you if you may or not spawn vehicles. Again, I'm just going to leave this all true because we're going to leave this all completely stock. Now the next one we're going to look at is the player permissions. So we just go into here. So these are the levels. So as I said, as I shown you a moment ago, you have the different levels. You have the level 1, level 10, level 5, for example. So you can create multiple groups again if you want to have people that manage your server, like staff or just a moderator or the owner. There's no need, but I think it's a bit over the top if you start creating groups, but you guys might have servers, for example, like roleplay. If you do have roleplay servers, then obviously you'll need a few different groups. But again, I'm not going to cover this in today's video. However, the only thing we are going to cover is, for example, the one you want to have a look at, for example, is here. So we have group guest. So if you wanted to stop guests joining your server, you can actually change this to true. So that means that someone has to be signed into a BeamMP account. They will not be able to join without a BeamMP account. But I don't really like guests joining the server, because to me, when I do have guests join the server, they just cause trouble. But it's up to you. But I would probably recommend turning that on just to restrict guests from joining. And then again, you can also change the message here. So usually I have this set, for example, saying you must be signed to your BeamMP server, BeamMP account to join this server. But again, if you want to leave that completely standard, that's absolutely fine. Now muted, that means if they can't talk in the chat. So muted, it means they will not, if they type or send anything, it will not be able to get seen by any other people. And then banned, so that means if you want to ban them completely. So if someone joins with the group guest, if you had it enabled, whitelisted, or turned on, then obviously they won't be able to join the server. So what I would probably recommend, actually, for just thinking about this, rather than having it set to true and whitelisted, I would have that set as false, and then I would set banned as true. And then because they're banned, it will then show the banned reason, which is here. Now, I'm not going to forget anything else. I'm going to leave everything completely standard for the purpose of today's video. And if we go back into vehicles, so this is now a where you can actually configure the vehicles that they can and can't spawn. So, for example, if you wanted the admins to be able to spawn, I don't know, every single vehicle, but you wanted the players to only be able to spawn maybe 1 or 2 vehicles, you can specify this in this group here. Now, I will also have to put another link in the description below. The guys from Cobalt did actually create a list of vehicles, which is a huge list of all the vehicles that are in BeamMP, which you can just copy across and then paste in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab my configuration now, and I'll be back with you guys in a second. Okay, so I've just copied across my configuration file, which again, I'll put the link in the description below, and I'll explain what all this is. So, so at the start, you'll have the vehicle name, and then you will have the level of that vehicle. So that is if you want them to be able to spawn the vehicle. So for example, if we just go back to our player permissions, so as you can see here, so the group owner is level 11, so that's obviously the highest level. Group mod is going to be level 5. And then the group's default. So this is so as soon as you join the server as a normal player, this is the group that they will be given. So it's going to be level 1. Now, if we go back into our vehicles here, I'll tell you what, I'm going to see if I can split this. Should be able to. Yeah, perfect. There we go. Okay. So so starting off with our vehicles, so again, so you have the vehicle name and then the level. Now you want to set the level to the level that you want in terms of the group that you want to be able to spawn that vehicle. So, for example, if I was running a complete normal server, which I do, but I want players to be able to spawn cars, but I don't want to be able to spawn, for example, things like Christmas trees and crushers, just all the the stupid physics which you don't really need if you're running a racing server, for example. I would set all those level 9, which means they have to be at least a moderator to be able to spawn those. But however, if I want people to spawn, for example, like the big box truck, that's going to be level 1, level 1, level 1, as you can see here, because I want them to be able to spawn that vehicle. So you will need to, it will take a bit of time, guys, if you do want to go through all this. It took me a bit of time. I can put my configuration down here if you like, if you want me to do this. My configuration, as I said, is just so players can only spawn vehicles, but they cannot spawn any sort of other items. Now, the other thing to also keep note of, guys, which is important, which the guys didn't cover in the Cobalt video, which I thought I would sort of elaborate on a little bit. Now, if you guys are installing mods, so if you're installing a mod car, which again I will run through on how to do that in another video, you'll need to grab the name of the mod car by going into the files, and it will need to keep on adding to. For example, if you keep adding vehicles to your server, you'll need to keep on adding the list. And as you can see, I've got. Excuse me. As you can see, I've got quite a few files here. So, for example, I've got the Porsche 911, which is a mod by a guy called Twixer. So if you do add vehicles to your server, you will also need to add them to this permissions file as well. If you do not add them, no one will be able to spawn them, not even yourself as a moderator. So do make sure that you do that. So after we've configured all this, I don't think there's anything else which we need to run through. I think that is the basic essentials of the Cobalt plugin. So now that's all been configured, what we're going to do is we're just going to go back to our server and we're going to run the server again. So we've got the BeamMP server exe file. So every time you do run your Beam server, you always need to run this file here. So I'm just going to run this now. But before we do run this, actually, guys, just thought of something. We're going to right-click on it. We're going to have to make this file an administrator as well. I'll run it as an administrator every time. Now, to save you then having to right-click and click on Run as Administrator, I'm going to suggest by right-clicking and then going down to Properties, and then go to Compatibility, and then straight down here you have Run this program as the administrator. Click on that there, and then click Apply, and then OK. So every time you double-click this file now, it's always going to be running as the administrator. Now, as you can see, we've launched our server, so this is now all up and running. The way you can tell if it's running okay is it will always say down here, which is quite obviously, all systems start successfully, everything okay. So, brilliant. Well done, guys. You made your first Beam server. The only other area which we didn't cover is, as you can see here, so Cobalt Essentials does require you to set the vehicle cap to 10 or greater. This is purely just for the permission level, so you may want to just set it to 10 or greater just for the status, well, just for the purpose of if you are running Cobalt Essentials. If you're just simply going to be setting up a BeamMP server without Cobalt Essentials, then don't worry, you won't need to set it as 10. But I did set mine to 5, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly close the server and change that back to 10, and I'll just show you that it does fix the error. So you want to go back into your server config.toml file, and then max cars, which is here, we'll change that back to 10, save that, and then if we go back into our server, as you can see, the error is now gone. So just make sure, you might want to set to 10, but it's up to you guys. It depends on obviously how many cars you're going to use and spawn, etc. So that's our server now. So the server is now all sorted. So what we need to do now is we now need to give ourselves permission to the well, to actually become an admin of the server. So what we're going to do is I'm going to now start up BeamMP. So what we're going to do is if we just go to our BeamMP here and just boot up the launcher, and then what we will be able to do is once we've loaded up BeamMP, we will then be able to connect to the server, and I'm also going to show you guys on how you can set yourself as an admin. Now obviously if you are running this on a remote server it will be a lot easier, but because I'm running this on my own PC it's going to be a little bit tricky, so I'll run through it and try and get around it. So if we now go to multiplayer, because I'm hosting on my own PC, I am going to direct connect to it via a local host, which is going to be this IP here, which is my own machine's IP. But if you are connecting to your own server, you would actually see the list. Well, you see the server in the list here if you turned off that mode that said private. So if you set private to false, it means it will be shown in the public list, and players all over the world can join your server. If it was if private was set to true, you would then have to go to direct connect and connect via the IP address. So I'm going to connect directly because I didn't make it public, so let's just connect to the server. And as you can see, that's all joined there. So if I just get up my server console here, which is this one here. So as you can see now, so it says player connecting, and there's a few details in here as well, so you can see that that's my name on BeamMP. So that's all in here, that's all connected. So as you can see, I'm now on my Beam server. Now just give it a moment, it may take a moment to load. So we just click on vehicles. If we just try spawning, I don't know, just spawn this vehicle for example. As you can see, we're in the server and that's all working. Now let me just come out of this for a second, so I'll just delete this vehicle so it's not noisy. There we go. So now you need to give yourself permission. So if you are the owner of this server, or of your own server, obviously you're obviously going to be the owner of the server, you'll need to give yourself permission using the console. So we're going to go back into the BeamMP console here. So if you want to actually see all the commands as well, you can type in help and then hit enter. And then as you can see, you've now got all the commands. You have all the commands of just the normal BeamMP server, so you can kick people. But because you're now running Cobalt, you can actually ban people as well. So if someone's just being a bit of a pain in the arse on your server, you can ban them and they won't be able to join. But obviously the command in terms of giving yourself permission, so you can be the group of, so the admin of the owner of the server, you want to type in CE, so it's going to be this one here, so where it says CE set group, so it's going to be CE space set group, and then the player, so that's going to be your own name, so mine is the Golden Archers, and then the value, just obviously the owner. So as you can see now, I am now the owner of the server. Now because I'm now the owner, it means if I'm in game, I can also have access to these commands as well. So if I was to type in /help, as you can see, I can now see all the commands, and I can even ban people as well. So that's about it, guys. So this is about all the information you need to get you set up on a BeamMP server. Now, there is a few things I didn't cover in this video, so I'm going to cover on how to add, on another video, on how to add some custom vehicles, mods, etc. as well. So I will cover that in my next video. But hopefully this has been very helpful for you guys. If it has been helpful, please let me know in the comments, or if you have any issues, again, please also put that in the comments as well. But I am going to try and post some more videos, especially technical ones like server creation and sort of this sort of stuff. So if you guys enjoyed this type of video, please do leave a comment in the description below. Please give us a like and also drop us a subscribe as well. But for now, pleasure as always, guys. Thanks for watching and take care. Bye bye for now.